Yeah. One, we thank you again for having me. I appreciate you. The house settlement has happened, and I think that you know, as a football player, as my coach used to always say, you celebrate the night you win a game, and then the next day you get back to work. And I think that college athletics leaders should look at it similarly. It's a historic decision. College athletes will now be able to get paid directly from their universities and their schools for the first time in history, which is affirmation that, frankly, it should have always been happening this way. But again, it's a huge step in the right direction, but it's just opening up the floodgates for more more chaos. And I think, the word chaos is such a tricky word because sometimes chaos feels like things are wrong, but ultimately chaos typically comes in markets when things are correcting themselves to the right place. And until college athletics sits down with college athletes through their own organization, their own independent representation agency, a players association, and negotiate the terms in which college athletics wants to hold those athletes accountable to, they will never be able to truly enforce anything without looking over their shoulders for a lawsuit. Because ultimately, I understand that a lot of folks believe that the House settlement will prevent suits, more litigation for antitrust violation, but it was not a collectively bargained agreement. And a lot of the objections are just writing on the wall for some of the litigation you're going to see this summer and throughout the next year or two as this thing continues to play out. I think the final thing is, years ago, people used to look at the NCAA as the big bad wolf that's holding people back, right? You have O'Bannon versus NCAA, Alston versus NCAA, Johnson versus NCAA, House versus NCAA, right? Now, you've seen it over the last year or two, you have more athletes than ever that are filing suits directly against their coaches, directly against their schools, directly against their conferences. And so now what I look at the House settlement as is the NCAA has done a phenomenal job of turning the liability now, handing that over to the schools. And so now the schools and those conferences will have a responsibility to either continue to try to operate in chaos and try to create rules and structure over a group of people that don't actually have a real seat at the table, or do it the way every other multi-billion-dollar sports and entertainment business does it at the pro level, and do it in college athletics' unique way, proactively do it in a way that creates a sustainable future for college athletics. Again, if not, then you're risking further lawsuits, further litigation, potential bankruptcy of certain institutions and conferences, and eventually the NCAA. And again, right now you have the moment in time to be proactive and create your own future, as opposed to continue to let the world force you into this next evolution of the sport. Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, let's start at the ground level. I think that right now, athletes.org is transparently, we're fighting to represent all college athletes. And frankly, that might be the wrong thing to do. I'm saying that on camera. It might be the wrong thing to do. There's a lot of folks who think we should just represent football, or football and men's basketball, or football and men's and women's basketball, right? Some of the revenue generating sports, or the more commonly revenue generating sports. However, I think that ultimately, from college athletics perspective, it will be really, really tough for you to negotiate with one union or players association for football, a totally different one for men's basketball, a totally different one for women's basketball, and a totally different one for Olympic sports, right? And so ultimately, we have a structure right now where athletes, when they are signed up and become members, we have over 4,700 of them right now. When they're signed up and they become members, they are divided into chapters based off of their sport and their conference. And those chapters now have the executive committee, overarching executive committee, that now is able to be the steering committee for helping us create a real sustainable, systemic, ultimately solution for that chapter. So a chapter would be ACC football, ACC men's basketball, SEC women's basketball, SEC football, et cetera, right? And so now by us having those chapters, we're able to get the voices of those particular athletes, because what an SEC football player experiences and deals with is different than what a Big 12 football player experiences and deals with. And so we've tried to create this organizational structure and use technology and also getting out on campuses, but we have to take a scalable approach to getting true athlete feedback and data so that we can develop the right solutions for them. We're getting their opinions on transfer portal. We're getting their opinions on health and safety benefits and protection. We're getting their opinions on, hey, a lot of athletes, similar to a lot of the ADs, they don't like the fact that everybody's transferring every single year. They don't like the fact that they're working their tails off to build something with their university, and every time they have a good season or one of their teammates has a good season, that teammate gets taken and goes to another university. And so they're interested in multi-year agreements and deals. But again, a lot of the things that athletes want to see are the same things that college athletics leaders want to see. However, college athletics leaders continue sometimes to make the same mistake of let's just implement the rules, as opposed to getting them to agree to the rules, giving them a chance to negotiate the rules, so that then it's a partnership as opposed to something we're implementing on somebody. Because to your point, there's 400,000 athletes. I do think that you will see splits of, power, so to speak, or those revenue generating athletes, whether that's football or whether that's some of those, the Big Ten and the SEC schools in particular. And so there's an argument that you could just represent them. But the point is, with all of these different athletes jockeying for position, if you're not negotiating with one representative body, it's going to be really, really hard for college athletics to survive in this framework. It's huge. It's a partnership. I think that, one conference commissioner has spoken with us, and he said he thinks the things that are preventing our progress or slowing our progress, because we are making tons of progress. We have more ADs and GMs meeting with us, working on a CBA, frankly, behind closed doors with us, which is phenomenal to see, right? And they're working alongside us and our athletes to build it. But as one conference commissioner said, it's self-preservation and ego at this point in time that's really hindering progress. I think on one hand, it's uncomfortable thinking about a players association. And then when a lot of folks hear players association, they also automatically hear union and assume union. And we're not a union. It's not that there's anything wrong with being a union, but college athletes aren't employees yet. And so there's no reason for us to be a union. We're more of a trade association. We are a trade association, similar to how the Screen Actors Guild and stuff represents the actors, so to speak. I think that right now, because it's funny, multiple people have reached out like, why aren't we doing this? What makes sense, right? I think that you have certain leaders who are in very dominant positions, who like their dominance. And despite the proposals and the presentations and all of the writing on the wall that shows where the future is going, but also that there could be more for everybody if you do it in a partnership-like mindset, right? There's more growth to be had. Frankly, there's some people who don't want parity. They don't want parity. They want complete dominance, and their job is to dominate, And so right now you got a lot of people, I had to put on my Brandon Copeland, the former NFL player hat. When I was on the football field, I wanted to dominate the man in front of me. I didn't want parity. I didn't want them to have a chance. And right now you have a lot of schools who are being led by people who their goal is to dominate. And sometimes their goal is they're thinking about their next contract. And unfortunately, everybody is waiting on what they do. But ultimately, their incentives is not to save the rest of college athletics. Their incentive is to continue to put their conference or their school in the position to be the dominant name for the rest of time, frankly. And so you can't knock them for that, but you also have to hope that more and more college athletics leaders say, hey, I'm not going to keep following these folks into the abyss, because, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that there's only going to be more chaos down the road, and that this is just a Band-Aid. The final thing I'll say is, again, I think a lot of people look at the Players Association and the league or the entity that does the negotiating with the athletes as a combative thing. And again, I've talked to the NFLPA, I've talked to the NFL, and they both look at it as a partnership. If you look at commercials at the Super Bowl, you'll see the NFLPA's logo on a lot of those commercials, as well as the NFL's, because it's a partnership. But there's some folks who will say, well, how will we negotiate with you guys? Because the athletes aren't negotiating with the schools, right? The teams that want to be a part of that CBA process would have to join a league or a entity, similar to the way they've created enforcement entities and LLCs. And they will be a part of that entity the same way the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans and the Dallas Cowboys are all a part of the National Football League, LLC. And the NFLPA negotiates with the National Football League, the national entity, and that creates the rules and the frameworks for all of the teams that play within that league. And even if you're in, because I heard this a lot as well too, I'm in a right to work state. I get that. But the Carolina Panthers are also in a right to work state. The Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a right to work state. They're in the red states. And again, they've all somehow found a way that, us being a part of this league at the national level grows this game, but also gets us our lives back to be able to focus on growing the business as opposed to defending all of the lawsuits that continue to pop up. Yeah. I mean, right now we've been DMing and going to campuses and setting up meetings with athletes. And I think that the chaos, frankly, has influenced and encouraged them to come to us even more, right? There's I don't want to say complete, but if you ask most college athletes right now, there's a lack of trust that they have in the universities at this point in time to be doing business in their own best interest. So I think that encourages people to come to us. But I'll also say, I mean, again, this should be a partnership. And when I say that, when I signed to the Baltimore Ravens in 2013 as an undrafted free agent, I didn't know it, but I was also signed to be a part of the NFLPA. In my player contract, there's a recognition clause that makes me a part of the NFL Players Association as well. And then when I was with the Baltimore Ravens that summer, the NFLPA came in and presented to me and all the other athletes on the different benefits and all the league updates, the rules updates, et cetera, et cetera. So the NFL and the NBA and the MLB and the WNBA, they have agreed to facilitate this ecosystem where players can get educated on their Players Association and educated on their benefits. Because again, it's for the betterment and the benefit of the entire ecosystem and the sport. And so my job is to help unify players and get them onboarded. But I will be very clear. I am a former NFL player who has done a few things off the field. And my dream was never to run a Players Association. I didn't grow up wanting to do this. I didn't grow up wanting to be a professor at the University of Pennsylvania either. But I've been called to do this. I have an amazing wife. I have 3 beautiful kids at home, and I will not be chasing 500,000 college athletes every year to try to change their lives for the good. So I'm calling the college athletics leaders out. You guys will be partners with us in helping facilitate those relationships, because I want to be very clear. I want to watch my kids grow up. I literally walked away from 11th year in the NFL, one, because of my body, because I wanted to walk away while I could walk away. But I love my family. I love my wife, and I'll be damned if I spend my time trying to convince people of something that can help them. Ultimately, not because of my ego, not because I'm too big for it, but because, again, we are helping college athletics, whether they want to admit it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. We're helping you in building a sustainable future for this ecosystem. So again, I think that everyone should do a deep dive on how it works at the NFL, NFLPA. Yes, during the CBA negotiation, are there arguments? Is there a back and forth? Absolutely. When somebody crosses the line in rules, when somebody, I just was talking, when a team is over practicing or over abusing its players, are there issues? Absolutely. That's how it should be. And it's okay. And people will tune into the games and will watch this ecosystem continue to grow. But if you look at it where it is today, the House settlement just passed. You got private equity and all these other conversations, super leagues being talked about. And this thing is only going to get more and more professional and professionalized. And so you have to, at some point in time, look at the fact that every single person has their own organization. The NCAA represents the schools, NACDA represents the athletic administrators, NABC, AFCA, NADA, et cetera. And college athletes have no independent organization. And again, that just puts a lot of liability on the schools that, people are aware of at this point in time. This isn't the 50s or the 60s. Yeah, I think I'll start with what AO has to do. I think we got to continue to build the relationships that we're building, not only most importantly with our athletes and getting them aware of their rights and the real rules in college athletics right now. There is no transfer portal. As much as people want to use transfer portal as a thing, the NCAA has come out and said you can unenroll and enroll at any point in time. Right now, transfer portal is a big marketing play, similar to the term student athlete and NIL. NIL is a marketing deal, right? And ultimately, we need to continue to do our job of just making sure athletes are aware of their rights, the benefits that we've provided to them, and make sure that they're able to maximize this current version of college athletics. In the meantime, we also need to continue to win over folks on the college athletics side. Again, we're talking to a lot of your peers now and building a first version of a CBA, a collectively bargained agreement. And we're doing that, again, with the athletes and with some of those peers, as I mentioned. And I was about to say it's a beautiful deal, but I don't want to sound like, a president or anything like that. So I think when the market sees it, it's a solution. And again, we're open to feedback for that solution, frankly. And then on the other side of the table, so to speak, I think that, it's just time to take a real hard look in the mirror in terms of we can use the House settlement framework as a framework to start over the next 12 to 24 months, right? How do we use this historic decision to now proactively go clean up the space? Because one, not only is it going to help protect our universities and our donors and the public funding that comes into our universities, protect it from going to frivolous litigation and lawsuits for one-off athlete here, and these grievances that will inevitably happen. Like let's not act like the House settlement is just going to make everything even and there's not going to be a problem with an athlete at this point in time. But using that framework to now come to the table and create a set of rules that can now be enforced, right? I think that there will be an evolution as well on that side, because right now the scary thing is nobody wants enforcement, or when you're trying to enforce things, you get states that are, coming out and saying, hey, we're not going to play by these rules. So, again, you got to look at what ecosystem we're starting to create and enable for the long haul here. But I do think that there's going to be a window over the next 12 months, frankly, to actually proactively create a system and a set of rules that can be implemented over the next 24 months to 36 months that really puts college athletics back on track to have a sustainable future. The final thing I'll say, again, there's a lot of constructs that we're talking about right now, that our athletes are talking about right now. Hey, my coach just fined me for blank. Hey, man, yeah, that sounds like an employee to me, right? Hey, my coach just fined this player less than they fined me for doing the same thing. Well, I can see the next lawsuit happening, right? Um, there's so many things. They're talking about tampering and all these things. Again, all of these things, they sound really, really normal and really, really good to say for an NFL player who's an employee who's agreed to it through their players association. But for that amateur athlete who's just agreeing to an NIL deal that some of you may plan to take away if they get hurt or if they don't perform well, again, you're just setting yourself up for the next lawsuit, which no one deserves. That's not what I'm looking for. I've benefited from college athletics. I've benefited from athletics just in general. This is a beautiful opportunity to change people's lives. I just think that the leaders in place, everybody at every single level, player development, AD, presidents of schools, governors, etc., the leaders in place need to take a hard look in the mirror and think, okay, hey, it's time for us to do this thing the right way. And it's not that hard. It's not that difficult. We can take cues from what's happened at the pro level, bring these athletes to the table, get them to understand and agree to all of the rules that we want, per se. They will push back. They will negotiate because we'll be doing it alongside them. But ultimately, now you'll have a system that now can show the political landscape that, hey, we know how to police ourselves. We've created the solution ourselves. We're not just looking for you to come up with a blanket solution for us, but also now we can get college athletics back on track.